Hey there, and here's the lesson on solving equations. So at the moment I'm right next to the computer, so my voice would be pretty loud, but once I start writing I'm going to be probably 2 meters away from the computer, so at that point you might need to turn the volume up. So solving equations. Now getting up to the interesting and very useful part of algebra. Solving equations requires that you rearrange an equation to work out the value of the variable. Sometimes they refer to it as the unknown. So sometimes another name for the variable is, they might say find, solve, they might say solve, they might say find the value of the variable, or they might say find the value of the unknown. So one thing you need to think about when solving equations, you need to think of opposite operations. So this is where it's going to get quiet, so you might need to turn up the volume. So the opposite of add. What's the opposite of add? The opposite of add is, correct, subtract. What is the opposite of squaring? The opposite of squaring is, it's like that funny symbol, and it's like the square root. What's the opposite of multiplying? So the opposite of multiplying is divide. And the opposite of cubing something, so like something to the power of 3, the opposite of cubing, what is it again? That's right, it's similar to the square root, but instead it's a cube root. So cube root. Okay, so that's what you need to think about when solving. You've got to think of reverse operations to solve. So to solve an equation, you will rearrange the equation and find the value of the variable. So here's an example of a question. So what I'll do is, I'll kind of circle this part here would be the question. So you'll note that I've kind of like written it out and shown some working out and some explanation. So I'll just kind of try to make it really clear what kind of working out you need to show. Because we're very, very fussy about the working out. So something like solve the following means what is the value of m? So something as simple as this one in pink, m plus 8 equals 14. It's true, you could look at that and you could realize, hey, m is 6, because it's so obvious 6 plus 8 is 14. But anyone can do that. We're not interested in, like, can you work out numbers in your head? We're interested in can you learn the language of algebra and communicate the process in an algebraic way. So as I said, like, just saying, hey, I can do it in my head, like, so can anyone. So we need to see, can you actually communicate it using algebra language? So solve the following, m plus 8 equals 14. What you need to do is to get m by itself, the variable by itself. So the answer will be like n equals something, like n equals 6. To get the variable by itself, we need to cancel out the 8 somehow. So we need to remove the 8 in a certain way. So that's where you need to think of the opposites. What's the opposite of adding 8? That's right, it's subtracting 8. So the opposite of adding 8 is to subtract 8. So if you want, you could think of, okay, minus 8, minus 8. And you need to do it to both sides. So to keep the equation balanced, you need to subtract 8 from both sides. And notice when I subtracted 8 from both sides, minus 8 plus 8 on the left-hand side has cancelled out now, hasn't it? So it's gone up. So now it's just m on the left-hand side equals 14 minus 8. Don't write 8 minus 14. The 14 should go straight down here, and then the minus 8 should come after it. So because 8 minus 14 is minus 6, and minus 6 plus 8 is not 14. So just be careful. Keep the 14 where it is, and put the minus 8 next to it. So n equals 14, take away 8, and then n equals 6, and check your answer by substitution into the original equation. E.g., the original equation was m plus 8 equals 14. So if m was 6, let's check. 6 plus 8, does it equal 14? Yes, it does. Because the left-hand side equals the right-hand side. So you can check your answers in tests by subbing the number back into the equation to see if the left-hand side balances with the right-hand side. So notice in each of these, very important, each line must be an equation. This is the way I kind of like it set up. So each line should be an equation. Notice the first line, m plus 8 equals 14. That's the question. The second line is still an equation because there's an equal sign and stuff either side of the equal sign, and there's a variable in there. So m equals 14 minus 8 is still an equation. And the final answer is an equation too, because I wrote m equals 6. If I wrote equals 6, that's not an equation anymore. So each line must be an equation. It's something you've really got to think about. So here's the next question. We've got 6n equals 24. So that 6n means 6 multiplied by n. So what's the opposite of multiplying by 6? It's dividing by 6. So that's what we need to get n by itself in the answer. So to deal with the 6, we need to divide both sides by 6. So some people like to show it like this. You can make little notes to yourself like that. See how we do it to both sides? Or, remember in algebra, it's better to use fractions. Don't use the divide sign so much. It's okay in your little thought processes if you're on divide by 6, divide by 6. So 6n divided by 6. The purpose of doing that is, it means that the 6's have cancelled out now. 6 divided by 6 is just 1. So on the left-hand side, we've got n. And on the right-hand side, we have 24 over 6. Use fractions for divide, not the divide sign. Because when you get into later years, if you use the divide sign, you might get a big mass issue. So keeping it as fractions means that when you have more complicated equations to solve in later years, you still won't have a bed mass issue. So 24 divided by 6 is 4. Check your answer by substitution. Okay, 6n minus 24. Oh, sorry, 6n equals 24. 6 times 4 equals 24. Yes, left-hand side equals the right-hand side. So you check your answer is correct. If you got n equals 3 and you subbed it in, you would realize 6 times 3, it's not 24. So you would have realized something was wrong and you'd go back and check your work. Or try it again from scratch. Here's another question. Another question here. Okay, it says solve a over 7 equals 5. So remember, fractions mean divide. So to get a by itself, we need to deal with the 7. So the opposite of dividing by 7 is multiplying by 7. So we need to times both sides by 7. Times both sides by 7 is what we're going to do. So when you times this side by 7, then, see the 7's cancel out. 7 divided by 7 just cancels. So that looks like we times by twice over here. So times by 7 here and then times by 7 over here. But remember, use brackets for multiply instead of the multiply sign. Because the multiply sign gets mistaken for an x in algebra. So the multiply sign will often get mistaken for a variable. So you can avoid using the multiply sign by using brackets for multiply instead. So a equals 5 times 7, a equals 35 is our answer. Let's check our answer by substitution. So the equation was a over 7 equals 5. Let's try subbing it in. Let's see, 35 divided by 7 equals 5. Yep, left-hand side equals the right-hand side. We've checked our work. Now let's moving on to ones we have to think a bit more. Because on this equation, we have 3d, take away 6 equals 9. So the problem is there's two things to get away from d. We've got a 3 and we have a 6. So what you've got to think about, a good kind of rule of thumb is which one kind of geographically is further away from the d, sorry. So further away from the variable, we have 3 is right next to the variable, it's being multiplied. It's kind of like you're doing the reverse bed math. So you've got to deal with the subtraction before the multiply. So 6 is kind of furthest away from the d, if you can think of it as being like that, like peeling onions off a layer until you get to the core, which is d. Peeling layers off an onion until you get to the core, which is the d. So do we deal with the 3 or the 6 first? 6 is furthest away from the 7. So deal with 6 first. Put it in your own words if you want. 6 first, as it's farthest from d compared with the 3. So how do we, so it's minus 6 on this side. So what's the opposite of subtracting 6? That's right, it's adding 6. You can add 6 to both sides. And in doing that, we'll make this cancel out. And so see on the left-hand side now, we just have 3d. So now we have 3d. And then 9 should go straight down to where it was. And the plus 6 should come after it. Because the thing you're doing to both sides shouldn't appear before the 9. You should do it after the 9. It's fine with add and subtract, but when it comes to with adding, because 9 plus 6 is the same as 6 plus 9, but with subtracting, it's an issue if you don't do that. Because 9 minus 6 is different to 6 minus 9. So we've got 3d equals 9 plus 6. Then just work out this answer is 15. 3d equals 15. How do you deal with the opposite? 3D means 3 times D. What's the opposite of multiplying by D? That's right, it's dividing by 3, sorry. Multiplying by 3 is dividing by 3. So divide both sides by 3. And when you divide both sides by 3, these ones will cancel out and you'll just have D. So then we've got 15 divided by 3. So don't by mistake do 3 divided by 15. Both sides are being divided by 3. So the 3 should be in the denominator. And then 15, use fractions to divide instead of the divide sign. 15 divided by 3 is 5. Check your answer by substitution. So checking your answer by substitution, you've got 3D minus 6 equals 9. So sub it in, and you've got 3, 5 minus 6. And what does that equal? That is 15 minus 6, which equals 9. Okay, great. Left-hand side equals the right-hand side. Fabulous. And we've got one more to go. So 5p plus 4 equals 50. So perhaps expand first to remove the brackets. You don't have to. You could have divided both sides by 5 first. But if you expand it, 5 times p is p, 5 times 4 is 20. It has the advantage that you get to practice your expanding, so you don't forget how to expand. And plus, when it's written in this form, it looks very similar to the above. Question C looks really similar, so you can solve it in the same way then. So 5p plus 20 equals 50. So you've got 5 and 20 to deal with. Which one is furthest away from P? That's right, furthest away from P is the 20. So you might want to deal with 20 first as it's farthest from P. So to deal with the 20, on the left-hand side it's been added, so to cancel it out, what do we need to do? We need to subtract 20 from both sides. We've got to keep it balanced. So subtract 20 from both sides, and then minus 20 plus 20 just cancels out to 0. On the left-hand side, notice you've still got 5p. A common mistake is, in the next step, people will write p equals, but it's not, p is not until you get down to here, and you've divided off the 5. So what's really important is you don't write p equals in the next step, you write what's here, 5p equals. So 5p equals 50, take away 20. Again, don't write 20, take away 50. Keep the 50 there, because if you reversed it, 20 take away 50 is negative 30, and you get the wrong answer. Whereas 50 take away 20 is 30. Then you've got 5p equals 30. 5p means 5 times p. What's the opposite of multiplying by 5? That's right, it's dividing by 5. So you're going to divide both sides by 5, which makes the 5 cancel out here, and now we have p. So p equals 30, divide by 5, use fractions for divide, and p equals 6. Just check our answer again, because the equation was 5 brackets p plus 4 equals 50. Use the original one, just in case you made a mistake in expanding when checking. 6 plus 4 equals 50. Let's see. So 5, 6 plus 4 is 10. So 50 equals 50. You're right, left-hand side equals the right-hand side. So see how important it is to check your work, because then you know you've got the right answer by subbing it in. Okay, so as I said, what's really important is, see in the second line here as well, make sure you wrote 3D here. If you wrote D equals, then technically it's not right, because D is not 15, D is 5. So if you, same thing with this, if you wrote 5p equals, sorry, if you wrote p equals 30, that's wrong because p is 6. Make sure you write 5p is 30. Okay, so just a few little afterthoughts. So like with substitution, you have the golden step, I keep blathering on about. Steps in solving are as important. It's not a golden step, but it's just steps. If not, so the steps are as important, if not more important than the answer. Because remember in the previous one, you could just look at this and say, hey, 6n is 24, n has to be 4. We don't care that you can do that in your head. That's not something we're interested in knowing. It's great, but this is not a number unit. This is an algebra unit. We're trying to learn a language here. So we need to see the language written out nicely and correctly and elegantly. So the steps are as important, if not more important than the answer. Therefore, make sure to always show you're working out in the same style as in the examples above. Oops. Okay. Each new step of working out should be on a separate line. So see how I kind of arranged it all vertically? I didn't kind of write the steps all next to each other horizontally. One underneath the other is really important. You do not need to write the sentences in green. So see how I wrote sentences in green? That's just to help you understand what was happening. You do not need to write the sentences in green. They're just there to help you understand what is going on. Something to this you might want to add. Each line must be an equation. I'll show you some common errors I'm seeing. So e.g., an example of an equation is 3m equals 40 minus 20, for example. And not something like this, see 40 minus 20 equals 20. See that? The first one's an equation because you've got the equal sign and you've got terms either side of the equal sign, and there's a variable in there somewhere, there's the m. On the second one here, there's no variable. So it's not an equation anymore. And yeah, just make sure you've got the correct equation as well. So common error, as I said, is people will write on this step, they'd write p equals, but it's not, it's 5p equals. So make sure you've got the correct equation there too. Okay, thank you very much.